This video will help you prepare for the Unit 8 Ecosystems ISN check. Please make sure on page 55 that the entire table of contents is filled in. On page 56, there should be an ecosystem and food chain vocabulary page. On page 57 is a warm-up from 4.1 about the trends in the graph. And on page 58 is the organisms in an ecosystem handout where we analyzed ecosystems graph data. On page 59 there are two warm-ups, one from the 12th and one from the 11th. On page 60 is the environmental interactions notes. And on page 61 is the day we started algae. So we have algae under the microscope on page 61 as a look at a primary producer, and the Algae 101 notes as well on page 62. On page 63, you did a matching activity with the words that we looked at, so phycology, inoculum media, and we matched those words. And on the next page, we have page 64 with the algae growth experiment. On 65 is algae under the microscope, day 2. We provided and made the wet mounts for the algae sample, and then design your own algae was on page 66. Page 67 was the data nugget, the article and graph analysis. And on page 68 was the calculating growth rate. So we calculated the growth rate and then graphed to look at the biomass of the algae over 2 days and filled in the conclusion. On page 69 is the food web for the clapper rail it had to work on in class as groups. And on page 70 is your ecosystem and engineering activity where we filled in the pages over the different issues and factors influencing the clapper rail. On page 71 we have a graph also analyzing clapper rail population growth. And 72 was the article that you became a specialist on the influencing factors of clapper rail. Page 73 was our engineering page where we reviewed the different processes and steps for the engineering design process. Page 74 was the Clapper Rail Nest Engineering Design Challenge rubric and design sheet. Page 75 was a warm-up from the 26th. And on page 76 is the Part 5 Elaborate. We'll be collecting more data on an additional species threatening an ecosystem on the bark beetle and the California drought. Page 77 is where you drew your study guide. So I have my food web key on top, and then underneath is the rest of the study guide. And then across from that was the study guide questions on page 78, and on the back of this also is your outline for your essay test. And then lastly on page 79 we have the practice test called Energy Pyramids. We practiced for the test, and we filled in again both sides. And then we also had two warm-ups underneath that page on 79 as well. So make sure if you're missing anything, you check the daily agendas for clickable links to print them out, or come to the absent file to get an extra copy.